Hello, and welcome to this Saturday afternoon SED Talk with your host, Dr. Cedric Wood. That's me. Today I'm going to be talking about two things. One will be relationship skills, but that will be second. First, I'd like to just introduce the idea that there's something more we should be doing about this Afghanistan collapse. There is so much in the news about what happened. That's called being descriptive, just describing what happened with the Taliban forces coming in, the people running in the streets, chasing after the planes, and the tragedy of two young men falling off the plane as it took off and losing their lives. The second thing they're describing is what led to this disaster, and that's okay. There is also some talk about what we should be doing going forward to have things be better. That's fine. But there's a fourth thing that's happening almost not at all. And that has to do with the world of psychological understanding of what's going on here. I have not seen one psychologist interviewed about the Taliban fighters and leadership. Clearly, there are some personality traits and even diagnoses, if you will, of the Taliban fighters, at least historically. Everybody in the world knows how ruthless they've been. Does that mean the leaders are psychopaths, sociopaths, certainly egopaths? And so the question is, should we be talking about these personality traits? For two reasons. Number one, to understand more about why something like this would happen. And number two, doing it in hopes the Taliban leaders will listen in and learn how to be a good man. Ever since Socrates, 2,500 years ago, we've talked about living a good life or being a good man. Well, I am not prepared to talk about the politics of this whole disaster in Afghanistan. But I am qualified to talk about the psychological underpinning of what this, why this is happening. I have 200 graduate hours in psychology, counseling, and family therapy. I've been leading groups in psychiatric hospitals for over 30 years. And I've been doing therapy in my office for about 25 years. So I think I've reached a place in my career where I might be qualified to talk about the personality traits that we see happening with the Taliban. So I'm going to do this video to help the citizens of America and of the world to understand the drive and the personality of the Taliban, but also to hope that the Taliban will tune in and will be inspired to become good men. Now, recently I did a video on the 8 traits, the 8 great traits of healthy relationships. So what I'm going to show today and talk about is a companion piece. This really is all about how to have healthy relationships, but it's also, you could say, a sheet on how to successfully take over a country and have the citizens of the country like you, support you, and obey you. The Taliban leaders, wouldn't you like that? Okay, I'm going to go over how you can do that. I'm going to use a list of about 21 words that I have on the sheet. No matter how I try using video editing equipment, it will not let me edit or add graphics. So I'm just going to have to read these words to you. I'm sorry. All the words, until I get to the bottom, begin, strangely enough, with F, G, H. That's odd. I tried to make an acronym, but I just kept coming up with these 3 letters. So I'm going to go over this list and hope that you will adopt these traits if you're a husband, if you're a wife, if you're a boss, if you're a professor, or if you're a general in a terrorist army having taken over a country. Okay? Number one, be flexible. Now, why is that? Because if we're rigid and unbending, that leaves the other person feel disregarded, and they're going to be unhappy. Okay? Before I go further, let's remember back to Queen Mary I. She eventually became known as Bloody Mary, and she did not have a very happy reign, and in fact she ended up dying young at 42, either from flu or from cancer. Her life did not go well. Don't you want your life to go well? Then adopt these traits. Queen Mary was not flexible. She was rigid. She wanted to make sure that her religion, the Catholic Church, was the Church of England. And a lot of people did not want that, so they pushed back. You know how she responded to these people who pushed back and said we want to be of a Protestant faith? She tied them to a pole and burned them to death in front of spectators. What a horrible thing to do to another human being, and especially just for having a different opinion and a different religious style than what you have. What a tragedy. What a horror. Please, I beg of any despot in the world, and especially the Taliban leaders, don't kill people just because they have a different point of view. So be flexible. Number two, be generous. Now that usually means with money or time, but it also has to do with being generous of spirit. If you believe that way, that's fine. I believe this way, I can be generous. Number three, helpful. I hope you really roll up your sleeves, Taliban, and you help the country get back to normal. Help business owners get back on their feet and start making money. Help everybody put their house back in order. Number four, forgiving. There's a lot that's been done against you by American soldiers. A lot of you have been killed. That's what happens in war. That's what happens when you become arrogant and demanding and aggressive with guns, is you go into battle and you kill some people, and then some of your people are killed as well. That's tragic, okay? You can hang on to that. You can choose to remember that and try to get revenge, or you can dedicate yourself to forgiving the American soldiers and the Afghan soldiers who fought against you, and moving on and creating a space of generosity and forgiveness. The next word on here is my favorite one of the whole list, gracious. It's based on the word grace. That's really another word for being forgiving. It's a word that means I'm going to be flexible and generous. These four words just go together. Forgiving and gracious. I'm not going to hang on to my hatred. I'm not going to hang on to my judgmental attitude. I'm not going to hang on to my need for control and power and domination. I call that PCD personality. That's not going to get you where you want to go. Okay? Try to adopt these traits. Be gracious. Allow other people to have their attitudes and their lives. Humble. To do the ones I've gone over already, you have to have some humility. What's the opposite of that? Pride. Prideful. Lots of pridefulness. Me, me, me. That's not going to get you what you want. And in the process, there are going to be a lot of people who are killed. That's what the whole world is worried about. That you're going to become a murderous lot, torturing and maiming and killing people in Afghanistan. Please don't do that. That is so ruthless. It's so full of horror. It's so devastating. Don't you want to create peace, love, and harmony? Maybe those words are strange to you. Maybe you grew up in a household where there was no peace, love, and harmony. There was strife and conflict and anger. No wonder you've developed this personality style over the many years. Many of the soldiers did not have a father growing up. This was confusing and heartbreaking. That where was my father? Where is the family that I need? Two psychologists in Washington, D.C. at APA presented on that. They studied, I think it was about 10 terrorists who had been involved in an attack and lived. So they were there to interview, and 9 of the 10 reported they did not have a father growing up. No wonder they reached out for a strong male presence to help guide me through my young adult life. That's tragic. But let's create an atmosphere of love and calm in Afghanistan, please. The next word is forward thinking. If you focus on the past and the strife, and yes, the killings that have happened amongst your people, then you're going to be full of bitterness and anger and resentfulness and aggression. That's going to feel good in the moment to aggressively harm people, but it's not going to work for you in the long run. Despot after despot after despot, a lot of them are the kings and queens of England. They ruled with a harsh hand and they suffered in the end. Please don't do that. Grateful. You should have an attitude of gratitude. There wasn't a horrible, bloody war between the American soldiers, the Afghan soldiers, and you, the Taliban. There wasn't. You should be grateful for that. Thank goodness. I mean, everybody's angry at President Biden for what he did, but you should be immensely grateful that he didn't stand there and fight and shoot a lot of bullets and throw a lot of bombs your way. That should help you be calm and more kind. Hopeful. Always remain hopeful for the future. Things may be tough right now as you start to take over Afghanistan, but try to be hopeful for a better tomorrow, and that's really up to you if you'll follow these traits. Forthcoming, be open and honest about what you're going to do. Genuine and honest. So these 3 words go together. If you're duplicitous and secretive, then people won't trust you. You have to be open and honest. And then people will trust you, and they may even start helping you be a successful group of people who are rulers of an entire country. Isn't that what you want? A successful regime? Well, then you have to have certain personality traits to make that happen. And that's why I'm going over this. And the 3 I'll go over next are faithful, good, and honorable. Faithful to the cause. Well, that's going to be pretty easy. You talk about Sharia law and being a Muslim, and you're going to be faithful to Allah. Okay, great. But the problem is there's also a need to be faithful to the people of Afghanistan. And the next word is good. There's a lot written about being a good man. I want to encourage you to be good men that do the right thing for the most number of people, not just for yourself and for your circle, your close personal circle. And the last word is honest. That's right along the same lines. Be open and honest with the world about what your hopes are for the future and what your plans are. And if the world notices that you are being honest and all these other traits, they will open their hearts and minds to you. They will be supportive of you. Don't you want that? Then be good men and adopt good personality traits. Thank you for tuning in. I hope everything goes well in Afghanistan. I'll be presenting at the Texas Counseling Association on November the 5th, 2021 in Galveston. I hope you'll come or tune in by Zoom and listen to what I have to present, which is the 4 quadrants of poor parenting and the 16 sub-areas of those. Why is that important? Why is that pertinent? Because boys who don't get their needs met from parents grow up to be men who are not honorable. They have a lot of traits over here on the right side of the page. Things like rigid, controlling, full of resentful, pridefulness, disregarding of other people's needs, disingenuous, and that's not going to bode well for the country of Afghanistan and for the time that you are governing that country. So tune in to the other video where I do go over those 4 quadrants if you can't make it to Galveston. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. God bless you. Have a good day.